All right, it's 12:02. Let's get started. Thank you for joining the San Francisco chapter meeting today. A little bit of chapter business for us. We just held our last month in-person meeting and it was great. We had a great time. We look forward to making more in-person meetings. We're currently looking for a vice president for the chapter, and Hal from Dignity Health has stepped up. So I'll be reaching out to him and seeing if we can make that happen. Our chapter secretary is off today, so gave her some PTO. What's coming up in the next couple months? We got the annual institute in Squaw Valley or Palisades, June 1st to the 3rd. We have our golf tournament, so if anybody's interested in signing up for that or being a sponsor, please reach out to the CC website and they can put you in the right spot. Joyce or myself can help you with that. And then in August and September, we're going to hold some in-person meetings at local hospitals in the area, which should be a good time. So look for those invites in the mail, and we'll go from there. Last month, we also had our seismic update from HCI, or OSHPD, as many of you are familiar with, which was a great presentation. And with that, without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Scott and Kyle and Josh for the presentation today, bridging the PDC to accreditation gap. So, Scott, I'll release my screen and give it back to you.
All right, thank you, sir. Good seeing you again, Angel. And thanks for inviting us to your chapter meeting. This is a presentation that Josh, Kyle, and I did at PDC in New Orleans a couple months ago. And it's a topic that is near and dear to our hearts. And I'm guessing that if you've done this for any length of time as a facility manager or on the PDC side, this is an area that's brought some challenges to you. So very quickly, go through and introduce our team. Josh, if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great. And then,
yeah, absolutely. Hey, Josh Brackett. So I am a fire protection engineer by background, by degree. It's what I do every day. I'm affectionately known as the fire geek. If you guys follow me on LinkedIn or anything like that. My full-time job is I am the system regulatory director for Banner Health and manage 32 hospitals, 300 plus clinics from a regulatory consultant perspective. So Joint Commission is my life. I've had 14 Joint Commission surveys this year so far. So pray for me all the time. And then I also do a lot of work with ASHI and Nfpa, do a lot of codes and standards work. And then I am co-founder of a company called Legacy FM, where we develop training education programs for healthcare facilities teams.
Awesome. Thank you. Kyle?
So you can see on here that I lead the healthcare team for GWS. We primarily work in occupancy-related activities for PDC projects. So I really come at this type of topic from the PDC side with my experience over the last 20 or so years. What's interesting is that while I was away from GWS for a period of time, I actually started my own firm, and that firm is called PRD Planning, Patient Ready by Design. So Scott and I got connected, and it was on a project that you'll hear about during this presentation. And I really became interested in how we can do a better job transitioning projects. So it really felt like a really appropriate connection to Scott, and I've been really glad to be a part of this project. But broadly, my interest is in doing great turnovers of PDC projects. So looking forward to being with you on the presentation here.
Thank you, guys. I think that's a common thread with the three of us. We have a passion to move the needle in the industry, and that's what really brought us together. But I currently work as, I just got a different role, so I'm not principal consultant. I head up what was Facility Health Incorporated, our origin product. And at Brightly, we were acquired by Brightly, which for those of you that don't know was Dude Solutions. So some of you smile when you hear that name or wince, but either way, Brightly changed its name here about a month and a half ago from Dude Solutions. We were acquired back in December, and things have been really all the growth that we wanted to happen through the acquisition was realized through that time. So I've been on the life safety side of the industry since I got out of the Navy in the late 80s, so for a long time. And I bring the expertise, I guess, from the operational side. And with that, we'll get started. So some of the outcomes that we wanted to discuss is that we agree that facility leadership team, they have the responsibility to identify accreditation gaps and inform the C-suite of the risk of inaction. So what is, in practical terms, that's securing the funds for accreditation, which we believe, and we'll talk through, should be done during the project, not post-project. Outcome 2, provide and review a specific task list that can be used to assess maturity of each health systems and give you a process to engage that. So regardless of being ready day one for accreditation, we want to set the pace for operational excellence and continuous improvement. Outcome 3 is provide real-world examples of how an accreditation assurance program can improve operational excellence and mitigate the risk for your facility. And outcome 4 is we'll provide you some tools and checklists so that you can help your teams migrate to be ready day one. So I guess the big question is, are you ready for accreditation day one? When we presented this in New Orleans, we had a wide breadth in our audience. So we had C-suite, we had architects, engineers, facility managers, and we kind of keyed in on when we started. For one of the CEOs was engaged, and we said, well, when you get your certificate of occupancy, does that mean you're ready for accreditation? And she just smiled and she said, no, and where is that? Where is that line of delineation for accreditation readiness? And what is that? What does that look like? Does a certificate of occupancy equal accreditation readiness? You all are probably laughing because you'd say, no, that's when we start remodeling to get accreditation, right? So how does your current PDC process impact accreditation or address it? What if, and Josh liked this one, so what if your fire marshal or your state provided a letter that said you're good? Does that mean it's ready for accreditation? We all know those answers, or at least we think we do, but we hear these quite often. Kyle, you want to jump in?
Certainly, and where this particular project really kind of got legs, I know that Scott and Josh have been working on this type of work for a long time, but what got me connected to these two and their expertise was when I found a project that Scott and I had opportunity to work on, and the project was with a large academic health system, and inside the project, they basically voiced a concern. It was that PDC projects upon completion were consistently getting turned over in undesirable ways to the MES team. And it became really difficult for them to, in an ongoing way, support through FM these buildings that they felt like they didn't have connection to as they were being built. And so the question at hand was, how can we reduce our total cost of ownership of the building, as well as, really just getting acclimated in many ways to servicing the building when we get it handed over. And they were experiencing a whole lot of different types of problems, both from a personnel perspective, even physically located in different spaces. There was a lack of collaboration between FM and PDC. And with that lack of collaboration created an obvious disconnect in regard to process and early involvement in terms of the FM team having awareness of what was going to be needed as a new building was coming online. And that manifested in lots of different ways. Number one, access to critical documentation that was going to be needed as soon as the building was going to be looked after by the FM team. And another maybe typical example of this was a renovation in place of a single department. The refresh was underway, and the part of the scope involved from the PDC side putting in new flooring. As they ripped up the old flooring, it was discovered that underneath was asbestos tile, and the asbestos tile obviously needed to be remediated. And in so doing, they created a different ultimate floor height. And then when you compare that against existing neighboring adjacent apartments, now you had a bigger gap underneath fire doors. And not surprising, because Murphy's Law works this way, not long after, Joint Commission came through and they got dinged based on fire door gaps. And so that was an enormous problem, a lot of egg on everybody's face. And the strong desire was, how can we get out of these sort of situations in the future? Because after all, working together should have some real process to it, not just a theoretical, we got to do better. And so that was what we started out with, how to, from a real world perspective, how do we analyze this? And how do we get into what we need to help them provide with in terms of an additional process?
All right. So the process that Kyle and I took the client through was over about a 6-7 month period. We did both quantitative and qualitative analysis and surveys with the various teams that he mentioned, plus we brought in BIM and real estate and any other teams or stakeholders that touched projects, and and really started to distill down what were the issues, and some of those are what Kyle addressed. Some of those we're going to address here in the future because they're later on in the presentation, but there's pretty much across the board issues that systems face. So who are the stakeholders in these projects? Anybody want to shout anything out? Who? Patients? So we kind of broke this up, right? You've got your C-suite. So that's master planning, capital planning, all those issues are addressed. Your architect and engineers. Are there any architects on our call? You know what you get when you hire an architect to do master planning? New buildings. Just saying. I got Joint Commission jokes too, so I'm sorry. Your construction and your trades. One of the things that came out of our survey and the process we went through was that not only was there a gap in the handoff process, but actually the workmanship that was being performed was at a different standard than what the facilities and engineering teams expected from construction. So some of the things that were brought up was blocking, right? There should be blocking in these areas that they don't provide blocking. What are the methods, construction methods that are being used? What is the equipment? Is there standardized equipment, or do we have lists of all different types of equipment that we now have to maintain and stock parts for? Obviously, your patients, correct? I mean, that's what we do all this for, is to be patient ready and provide health care to our communities. right? And then you got all the other ancillary trades, secondary trades, life safety. You've got accounting, all those different areas. So all these different stakeholders are part of this, what I would call, it's not just the PDC process, but it's the entire building and turnover process to get to accreditation. In a traditional model, it's very linear, right? We've got master planning out here where we begin. You walk through a planning, design, construction process, and then there's a turnover and it moves to operations, right? And in this world, you've got clinical ops and your maintenance, your operations, repairs, asset management, and accreditation. They all occur, for the most part, post handoff or post certificate of occupancy. You know, and you take that master planning, even when master planning is underway, it's very heavily weighted on the PDC side with a very little impact and thought with the facilities and clinical aspects. Whereas in an ideal state, you would have an all-in where all stakeholders have of equal value and equal input. So this is Josh's favorite part.
Oh, this is my favorite. This is my
All
favorite.
right.
Okay, we'll go through one at a time. So I get this a lot. I also do regulatory for our design and construction group. Right now, we've got $2.3 billion in construction going on. So a big chunk of my job is making sure that we are evaluating to the appropriate code. So yesterday, twice, I got the phone call, hey, Josh, do I have to bring this up to this existing system up to code? So has anybody ever had that question? Anybody ever go through that? And my answer is always, it depends. Tell me what we're looking at. Tell me what we're going through. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it. But code is very clear. Nfpa 101 2012 edition, which we follow, of course, because of CMS guidelines, says in chapter 43, all the requirements associated with when you have to bring something up to new code. That is outside of IBC, ICC, California, OSHPA, of course, requirements, everything. So, but the answer is always, it depends. But the fire marshal said it was okay. I get that all the time still. I have a letter still. I'm going to frame it someday and I'm going to put it on this shelf behind me. But I have a letter from the fire marshal telling actually a contractor that they could disable the beam detectors in my atrium because it was inconvenient to test them. Unfortunately, those beam detectors were the only thing that would activate the smoke evac system. So I was like, okay, that's when I stopped listening to this excuse. And that was 10 years ago. We don't follow NFPA 101 here. So I get this one a lot. So architects, especially, no offense if there are architects who decided to stay on mute, but I get this a lot of, I have a hospital right now. I will not tell you the name of the hospital, but just in case the Joint Commission surveyors or CMS is listening in on me. But I have 40,000 square foot smoke compartments. So, and they said, no, it's okay. The new edition of IBC permits it. And I'm like, no. It's not okay because we don't follow that. You have to look at the most stringent code. Yeah, dead serious. So needless to say, that architect is not doing work for us anymore. But so there are, there's this education process of, we do have to follow NFPA 101 2012 edition because we get billions of dollars from the government. So kind of important. Fire marshal doesn't pay my bills. I don't have the money for that. That's a big one. Anybody ever get that one? I don't have the money for that. So a great example we get this a lot. So, but just I don't have the money to do it the right way, or to change that, or we're just going to Band-Aid. So yesterday there is a project working on, I don't have the money to keep my underground storage diesel tank, so we're going to rip it out. Okay, cool. How are we going to meet the dual fuel requirements for boilers? What are you talking about? There's a requirement in Code of Federal Regulations in the law that says you have to have dual fuel options for boilers. It doesn't say what kind of fuel, but you have to be able to have it on site and have a requirement. So you don't have the money to maintain it, so let's just rip it out. These are all true stories. Oh, I love this one. So California is better. I'm going to say California is better in this regard. I see less of it in California, but sprinkler to NFPA 13 requirements. I love when engineers put that on the drawings and they just leave it completely up to the vendor of how they're going to sprinkle, right? So instead of providing guidance, instead of providing information, instead of facilities providing standards, we leave it at this. So, and this is a great example of if you don't set the standard as the owner, somebody's going to set it for you. Chapter 43. So I already brought this up, but chapter 43, what's that? So I get that one all the time as well. If you don't know what chapter 43 is, please go read chapter 43 of NFPA 101, and it will completely change your perspective on renovations. And what does CMS have to do with this? So that is literally what, when I was with the 40,000 square foot smoke compartments, I got on the phone with the architect, we had a meeting, and I said, no, we follow NFPA 101 2012. And oh, Banners adopted NFPA 101 2012. Why did you guys choose that year? Because I like getting money from the federal government. So that's why. And they're like, well, what does CMS have to do with this? And I was like, okay, we're done.
So Josh, you asked me to present a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
That was one of the first questions I got. What's CMS?
Whew.
Oh,
Oh boy.
Wow.
The fight is real, y'all.
Wealthy neighborhood does not require federal dollars. I don't know. All cash.
There are some of those. Those are popping up. Those are popping up.
Yeah.
So a few examples. I told you guys about the smoke compartment example, so I won't harp on that one, but it is real. Fire pump acceptance test. I love this one. So built a brand new hospital, previous healthcare system. Joint Commission comes in for our initial accreditation, right? And I've gone through the documents at a high level, made sure the facilities manager, had everything, had everything ready. They could present it. Didn't do a deep dive though. So we get to doc review. Joint Commission surveyor says, "Oh, hey, I thought you didn't have a fire pump. I don't have a fire pump." Huh? And he holds up the piece of paper. He said, "How did it pass?" And they had the numbers. They had discharge, suction discharge number, everything. So I called the vendor, and he's like, "Yeah, we normally pencil whip those." So I have a fire pump. It's not a fire pump.
Well, it can identify however it wants, Josh.
It can identify. Yeah, there you go. Fire dampers. Great example of fire dampers. So fire dampers are often, there's two things. Number one, often way overused. I always ask the question, is this an operational change that we are doing from a construction perspective? Or is this something that has to go to city or county or state or somebody for review? If it doesn't have to be reviewed, I'm following NFPA 101 2012 edition, which is way more lenient on the fire dampers. And if it does have to be reviewed, every single time I always ask the question, hey, can I take an exception here? Sometimes they do let it slide. So what I do know is that if I'm continuously persistent and I ask them 450 times, eventually they're going to get tired of me. So that's what I'm banking on, at least. The second thing is that I went out actually on that new hospital for the fire pump acceptance. I was in the middle of doing a business case to insource fire damper testing, fire damper and smoke damper testing. So I personally went out and I tested all of the dampers in the building. 100% of the smoke dampers failed and 60% of the fire dampers failed. This is 1 year acceptance test. This is after the initial, this is after commissioning, this is after everything. So it just goes to show, why this is so important. Battery powered egress lights. I do have a building. We just built out the 4th and 5th floor of a building of a hospital here in Arizona. And the 4th and 5th floor have battery powered egress lights everywhere. And it is all tied to the generator. They're different lights than the 1st and 2nd and 3rd floor. Life safety circuits. So you guys know this one, but I'm just going to find the nearest circuit and just tie this into it. Never an issue, right? But it happens all the time. I'm fighting it right now on 2 joint commission surveys. Total cost for 2 hospitals to remove 14 circuits, $2.8 million, because we don't have the infrastructure to support it. So we get to do an infrastructure upgrade.
But you tied that up well, because these things, if they're addressed on the, I would call it the pre-certificate of occupancy side, right? They don't cause a capital or operational negative impact to your department once it's turned over. But once it's turned over, you own it. And I don't care if it's 1 day into your warranty or 364 days into your warranty, you own it, because, right? How long does it take you to get a fire door right now? Can you get it within the Joint Commission's required timeline? No, they're delaying buildings because they can't get doors. So.
Oh, that's the right. Yeah, those don't happen on our projects. That's what I hear from construction all the time. Those don't happen on our projects. Sure. Prove it. That you're aware of.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the initial part, right, is more of a linear plan. But what I want to propose to you is kind of a different way to think about it, right? So if you look at the entire life cycle of a project, right, plus its ongoing operation. So you're talking about for the life of the asset per se. These are things that we're going to talk about here, these next 5 areas that should be begun to be thought about in the master planning stage and addressed throughout the project, and then ongoing. Integrated testing and life safety commissioning. For those of you in the know, or maybe even, where is California on this, Josh? Have they started adopting?
Yeah, so California, I think you guys fall under 2018 IBC right now, is that right? Modified, of course.
I think that's right.
I think so. So integrated system testing is a requirement for any new building that is a high rise or has a smoke control system in it. So any atrium or anything like that, then you are required to now do integrated testing, develop your test plan prior to obtaining certificate of occupancy.
So we're going to talk about that in a little more deeply, but we're not going to get granular. Same with life safety commissioning. So we're basically talking about NFPA 3 and NFPA 4. And for jurisdictions that have not adopted that, when the new life safety code gets adopted through CMS, that will become a requirement. About commissioning. Commissioning to me is as I've seen it throughout the industry, it is a term like IT. What are we talking about? Doing an acceptance test Are we talking about doing a startup where it's documented or not? Or are we actually talking about doing full commissioning where we have an OPR and we're measuring the performance of that equipment against that OPR? So, you know, in terms of how to make this the best process for your building and your long-term care of those assets that are being installed, a full commissioning program is extremely helpful. Accreditation assurance, you'll say, what is accreditation assurance? It's how do you build into a process that is during planning, design, and construction that allows you to bridge that gap to your operational needs. It's where you're running your systems and you can meet the accreditation needs of that system. And then long-term strategic asset management strategies. You know, run to fail is an acceptable strategy if it's the right assets, but it can't be an across-the-board strategy. And sadly, because of lack of whether it's skilled trades or finances, a lot of facilities have opted to utilize that option in their day-to-day operations. So when we start to look at it, these are ongoing throughout the life cycle of your building. It's not just through construction, but it takes over, and once you move past the certificate of occupancy and into the running of your building, these 5 areas really play a crucial role in maintaining the health of your building. We'll talk a little bit more about each one of those. So commissioning is a process of planning, documenting, scheduling, testing, adjusting, verifying, and training to provide a facility that operates as fully functional system per the owner's project requirements. So it wasn't, you know, VE'd out or VE'd down because, you know, somebody needed to save a couple grand. It was, what is the owner's project requirements? And if there's some type of consideration for funding, then the OPR should be the document that it's measured against, and then we figure out what we can do without beyond that. So in your commissioning process, how do you do that? You know, you have a clearly defined OPR. You have a scope and services for the commissioning, sustainability, analytics. Are you utilizing analytics? Do you keep them through the warranty period so that you can actually measure the performance of the equipment against how it was designed? Your testing, analysis, and then ongoing training. What does that training look like? Is it documented in some form? Is it video documented? Can it be uploaded to your CMMS where you can actually have a video with that asset? You know, those are just considerations, things to think about. When you look at areas of accreditation, right, you've got your clinical and operational, your administrative, leadership, and then physical environment or environment of care, depending on your accrediting agency. So we're going to focus on physical environment, environment of care, which is the world that we typically live in very heavily, right, in facility management. So you've got your emergency management, safety, hazmat, security, clinical asset management, utility asset management, and life safety. We start to hone in on the construction process. The areas that bring the largest issue typically are in the areas of life safety. So, you know, what we propose is like an 8-step process here, where you have a tabletop review of your construction drawings for life safety features and compliance. Now, some of you guys are saying, yeah, we already do that. That's why we hire an architect. Well, my experience has been that if your architect has never been a surveyor, then you will have construction drawings that are not accreditation ready. They may or may not reflect what is actually required for accreditation. They may meet your building code requirements, but not your accreditation requirements. And then much like your inspection process, as the building is being built, you have different steps along the way to actually verify at rough in and top out whether those life safety features are being installed and installed correctly. Before your certificate of occupancy, we'd recommend a gap analysis or a mock survey for definitions purposes. What would that look like? So that would begin to uncover anything that was missed at the tabletop review or any of these other steps that would prohibit you from being ready day one for accreditation. A big area that Josh has another story, but he didn't talk about it, but I will a little bit. Fire rated door audit and acceptance testing. Why is that important? Well, because in a block or masonry type building, right, the mason trades install the frames, and general trades or trim install the doors. Who's doing the acceptance testing on that rated assembly, that door? Because it is required in Nfpa 80 that when that door is installed, that it has an acceptance test that has to meet the same criteria that you are inspecting your fire doors annually against. And what we're finding is a lot of doors are installed incorrectly from the beginning. If your frames are off and you can't get your gaps to qualify, then you end up owning the responsibility of replacing that frame and an entire door potentially, when it should have been adjusted in the installation process, or at the very least at the certificate of occupancy.
We're in the middle of, we're almost done with it, but got caught on survey actually 3 years ago, almost. 500 something fire doors were installed incorrectly, and they were not UL listed doors. But we had the documentation showing that they were, but then contractor, yeah, true story. So $2+ million later and contractor out of business, we are finishing up on that.
Well, it's a good thing you had that warranty, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that helped. Yeah. So, go ahead. So number 6 here, life safety asset inventory. How do you get your life safety assets into your CMMS? You're going through this very detailed process of acceptance testing, commissioning, tests and inspections through the various processes during C of O, and you've got all the data. What we're going to talk about is how does it get into your CMMS? Document review and assimilation into your compliance binders. Same conversation, right? You've got all the documentation. What is your baseline data now with your new building? And last, but certainly not least, life safety drawings. I'm going to go back to number 1. If who's doing your life safety drawings is your architect project of record, right? Ensure during your gap analysis process that those life safety drawings are meeting your accreditation needs. I often say life safety drawings, while there are requirements that have to be met, they are each facility's story to tell. So you're required to have specific things on your drawings and nothing more, but they need to be accurate, because as anybody that's been through a survey knows, the very first question is, where's your life safety drawings, and do you want me to survey you to those? Then we get into strategic asset management. So this is your long-term planning and approach for maintenance. You can see how that first paragraph there, first sentence, really defines why it starts in the master planning and planning section of your building, because it is a long-term planning and approach. So it's not whatever's the cheapest air handler that I can find, or let's put the largest air handler on the West Coast in this building. And if you need to maintain it, it takes, half a year to maintain it. And some of you know what I'm talking about there in the Bay Area. So strategic asset management also helps estimate and future goals, right? Helps you know where you want to be 5 to 10 years out, because you can start to look at, a new building, right? You build a new building, and you may or may not get additional FTEs because, it's a new building that doesn't need any maintenance, right? And hopefully you're all smiling, but wincing at the same time. But also, what am I going to do when that equipment starts to age out 5, 10, 15, and 20 years down the road? What's my long-term planning for that?
We're adding a 350,000 square foot expansion right now, and are asked to only add 7 FTEs. So there's a fight right now going on, but at least we're getting something.
I guess that's the upside you can look at. Josh, you want to talk about the next couple of slides, NFPA 3 and 4?
Yeah, sure. I love NFPA 3 and 4. So there may or may not be a book out there that Scott and I may or may not have co-authored on NFPA 3 and 4 on life safety commissioning and the requirements for specifically integrated testing. So there's nothing saying that you have to do life safety commissioning for NFPA 3 standard. However, strongly recommend it, because what it really entails is the integrated web of all of your life safety assets. So the fire alarm system at this point is, the brain of our life safety, and it touches all different systems and all different components. So much so like that there's, like I said, 180-page book out there on specifically how to develop a program around this. NFPA 4 is a requirement for all new buildings. Like I said, that there's the book right there. I couldn't remember if we had it in here or not. So you can actually get the book here, and it goes through how to develop integrated testing plan and program. And but NFPA 4 is required for new buildings that are high-rise or that contain smoke control systems. And then it also is a requirement for NFPA 101 2018 edition for all existing high-rise buildings or buildings that contain smoke control. So that's very, very important. I want you to hear it's required for existing as well. And it is only a matter of time before CMS adopts a newer edition of the code. There's no discussions of it right now. I follow that very, very closely. So there's no discussions of it right now. But when you do, you will have 5 years to have your plan implemented. And I can tell you from somebody who has implemented it at 5 hospitals, it cost almost $3 million, and it took three years of a almost dedicated function. So it is a very, very, very arduous task. So I implore you, purchase the book and read through it. And I'm available. Scott and I are available, of course, for questions if you guys want to dive in.
Yeah, and just so you know, this is an ASHI book. This isn't the Josh.
Yeah, we don't make any
version.
That's, yeah,
This was a
we
whole task
volunteered.
force. Yeah, this was a group. Yeah, go ahead, Josh. How you put this together?
Yeah. So this was, this was a vision of we're so reactionary in codes that we wanted to be proactive in this approach. So I convinced my CEO at my last hospital system to let me do this and promote what we were doing. So this is a case study based on that. And I said, we don't want to do this in a vacuum. We want to engage the best and brightest minds out there. And so we had multiple contributors and several authors, as you can tell. This was not developed in a vacuum. Like I said, it was developed to make a playbook that you guys can follow and implement as you're going through this. So definitely encourage you. I did tell Ashley it's the last time I ever volunteered to write a book. So
It was about a 2-year process, just, you know.
10,000,
and-
yeah, we calculated out as over 10,000 hours of work.
Yeah. And it's, not only are there about a dozen authors, but it was peer reviewed with SMEs, leadership from AHA and ASHI. But one of the other things I wanted to share with you all is if you're putting together an ITM program of any type, whether it's your integrated testing or not, this book is a desk reference material that can help you. It can help you in selecting vendors or deselecting vendors. It can help you in developing what needs to be done and when and how to organize it. So it's really written as a desk reference tool and a how-to. It's not your traditional bathroom reading. It's meant to be used every day. So what are the action steps that we can take? You know, one of the biggest lessons that Kyle and I learned when we went through this process was that the organization really required change management. And that comes from a commitment from leadership at the top, but everybody that touches the project, all those stakeholders, you know, to develop an accreditation focused commissioning strategy. And I think that that develops and enhances a compliance culture. And really, if you can create that between PDC and facility maintenance, you can accomplish great things together. You know, what is you know, the world that we live in today, if it's not documented, it didn't happen, right? That's the world we live in. So conduct a complete review of your CMS and accrediting organization standards, establishing inventories and processes to address the tracking and of reactive, preventive, and compliance-related tasks. So what does that mean? It means in advance of turning over the building, you have all the lists of whether they're life safety assets or they're your utility assets that you're responsible for. All those should have a process of getting into your CMMS. And Josh is going to talk about the practical side and how Banner has chosen to attack this. Create a risk assessment for your assets. You know, if age and condition are your only two data points, what becomes the arbiter if you have two air handlers that are the same age and they're in the same condition? You know, we can give you really polar examples, you know, the ICU and the atrium, right? So obviously, if you only have one bucket of dollars to spend, you're going to spend it in the ICU. But, you know, all decisions aren't that clear. And when you're talking about thousands of assets, how do you decide which assets you're going to do first? And, you know, we would recommend condition, age of asset, and your risk assessment on that asset as your quantifiers for making decisions with that asset type. You want to measure anything that you can measure. You want to measure. So if whether that's in your CMMS, which we recommend that your CMMS is your source of truth, your work order management system. But if you can leverage your on-site inspectors, acceptance testing and auditors, mock surveys, life safety drawings, any of the work that's going on during design and construction, and that you can capture that documentation and then validate the performance, that would be highly recommended. And obviously, the risk of inaction causes a downstream effect where you're going to be in the circling the drain of securing capital on a continuous basis. Because if we don't address these things upstream where they are occurring, then the impact is downstream where your operational and capital budgets are impacted. Then once you have that process documented with your policies and procedures and you've got your buy-in with your team, you can manage with confidence. Josh is going to go over here the last few minutes and talk about what Banner has done and what that looks like in a practical standpoint.
Thank you, John. So yeah, the Banner implement recognized this issue, and before I came on board even had implemented what we call the FIT practice, the Facilities Information Transfer. It's a 68-page document. I'm actually willing to share it with everybody. We shared it with several people from at PDC as well. It is specific, of course, to our health system, you know, and our CMMS and our technologies that we use and things like that. So, but it gives you a lot of the framework that applies. So the big thing here on this slide is this applies to all construction, expansion, renovations, renewal, anything, anytime that we do any kind of construction in the building. So everybody plays a part. This is not a single person is responsible for it. We involve the general contractors. They have requirements. We actually, in this process, we have all the asset tagging that happens on all of our assets before we even open the doors day one. Everything's already in the CMMS. All of our drawings, we use ATG for all of our drawings and asset management of life safety assets. So all of our life safety drawings are uploaded into the into ATG. The CMMS system, all of our procedures, our PMs are set up. So that way on day one, when we get that certificate of occupancy, our team is ready to go. So a few of our stages, we'll go through these. Determine our space identifiers, room signage. We've got a standard for all of our spaces. So our space naming, numbering nomenclature and how that works. The GCs are responsible for ordering the space barcodes from our internal. We've got an internal sign shop, so they do that. The inventory and naming convention. So we provide the naming and nomenclature for our building inventory. So that way everything is labeled the same way across the system. So I can run reports on kitchen exhaust fans versus lab exhaust fans. So very specific on how we do it. Again, so part of it is getting the floor plans to ATG, also getting our building finishes inventory updated. So we think about it not only just from that perspective, but the building finishes too. Getting those barcodes for our life safety equipment. Our barcodes for life safety are different from our building. So we have specifically identified where do you place the barcode? Does it go on the smoke detectors? Does it go on the door frame? If it's a high ceiling, all of that. So very specific on where those go. All of our demoed life safety equipment, if we're doing renovations, then we capture that in the inventory. So that way when Joint Commission comes, we say, here's what was demoed. Here are the devices that were taken out. Getting the architectural floor plans to our BMS provider vendor and our fire alarm vendors, also working with them on Joint Commission regulatory requirements. So I mentioned the equipment barcoding for life safety, and again we send our fire shop drawings to ATG. They actually help us get all of our devices into ATG from an inventory, so that way starting again day one, we're ready to go for that first quarterly inspection that we have to do of supervisory signals, for example. This one is all pink, as you can tell, like the whole thing. So we have our MEP and life safety plans. So our HVAC zones, we know where those are, our med gas zones, and where those shutoff valves are, fire sprinkler zones, what zones that sprinkler system is serving and where the shutoff valve for that is. We have pressure relationship information. We actually took an ASHRAE 170 and said, here's our critical spaces, here's our non-critical spaces, and those are established in a set PM frequency as well. So in the drawings, though, they'll click on OR room, and that'll be their monthly critical pressure check, is what we do. We have all of our cost center and Medicare information. This is huge for us. We have a person that's dedicated to cost center and Medicare information and keeping that up to date. Of course, evacuation maps, and we have a high-rise specialty stuff for high-rise buildings. We avoid high-rise at all costs now.
No, I think what's
But-
important here is 1 month prior to substantial completion. So it's
Yeah.
not post C of O
Yeah.
that all this that we've talked about so far has been being done. This is before you get your C of O.
That's right. And then 1 week before, we have making sure that all of our documentation is uploaded to compliance managers. We use digital binders. Submitting our CMMS regulatory PM template. So we have all of our PMs going into the CMMS, and then making sure that we get all of our life safety equipment in regulatory form. Clearly more steps, than what I'm going through, just doing some highlights here. And then 1 month post is where my team takes over on specifically like the basic building information. We use our documents to make sure that our BBI is up to date. And then we use the FDM to make sure that's where all of our as-built drawings, which is an entirely different conversation, but all of our as-built drawings go, which hopefully are, let's say, 60% accurate as-built at least. So, but and upload all of that information, all of our, and I've had to use that. I actually had to go not too long ago and 12-year-old project and pull the door hardware information to show how the door was specified during a joint commission survey. So,
All right, we got 1 minute to spare. There you go.
Perfect. This is our contact info. You guys can reach out to us, of course. That is truly my cell phone. I think that's Scott's cell phone. We can try it, but and Kyle.
It is.
But yeah. So that's our contact info. If you scan this, it'll go to our LinkedIn, and you guys can connect with us on LinkedIn. We're constantly trying to push and promote, just doing it better for the patient.
Fantastic. What a great presentation. Thank you three. This was, I was taking notes frantically and thinking, man, I should have my C-suite in here with me.
Well,
But thank you so much. I have a hard stop. If there's any questions from anybody out there, please ask. I'm definitely going to reach out to you three to get a copy of that. So thank you very much.
yeah, we'll send you a copy over, Angel, and you can send it out.
Yes, sir.
And then if anybody has questions, take us up on it. I mean, we all have day jobs, right? But we're also committed to moving the needle in the industry. So if we can help you in any small or large way, we will.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Hearing none. You have a great day. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
See ya.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.